Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fayette County School Corporation Board of School Trustees Business Meeting. It's Tuesday, August 13th. We are here in the admin building. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a light crowd tonight. I would like to begin by seeking a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and amended.
I'll do that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. A second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Patron comments on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from regular business meeting 7/9/24, the personnel report, retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, etc. The approval of the July 2024 claims 68426 to 68626, and donations. A donation of new miscellaneous tools valued at $740.92 from Mike Davis to WCC Construction Technology Program. The CHS class of 1969 is requesting permission to place a large rock at CMS to commemorate the last class to graduate from that location. So that's a request, not an act. It will be a donation once they donate. So I'm not.
So what you're approving this evening is the donation of the rock, if you will.
Okay, and they're waiting for permission?
Well, I guess if the board wants to approve that, we can bring that as an agenda item if we need to, in terms of the actual placement of the rock.
I don't know that that's I don't know what the board.
Where's it gonna, my question is, Brian, where are they gonna put it in that courtyard area where those benches are?
I think the plan, there's a tree that's very close to Grand Avenue, that there's a spot there.
Yeah.
Even over by our sign, we have out front, there's a rocked area.
Yeah, okay.
And one of those two places seems to be a place of prominence where people who could drive by can see
Okay,
it.
because I didn't know whether they wanted to put it in that courtyard area,
I don't think so.
because there are some,
There are a lot of benches there right now.
yeah, commemorations in there from other people. Okay,
Well, I don't know that this, I'm sure we will pass the consent agenda. I just don't know that we're the ones that need to give that permission.
Sure,
I would
sure.
think that would be,
And maybe the verbiage is wrong, but we thought, Randy and I talked about it in terms of the actual rock, because it does have value, and they are donating that rock.
Yeah.
right, I appreciate the donation, absolutely. And just the way it was worded, I didn't know if we were supposed to have a role in that.
Yeah, I think they want it to be one that the board essentially is accepting that donation.
And that's the
Whatever the cost,
permission.
and that's a permission for them to do
Obviously, they
so.
already talked to Brian, so.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ryan. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. A little quick on the hand there, Jeremy. Let's roll. Action items, personnel report, recommendations for employment, Mr. Harris.
Let me give you first the good news, is we started school last week with all teaching positions full. The bad news is you're gonna be here a little while I read the list, because there's a whole lot of, on the what was it, back in, I don't know, May or June, I said this was gonna be really short and it'll make up for, well, here's the makeup.
Yeah.
But we're recommending for employment, Patricia Fields, Student Services Grant Coordinator, Kimberly Kidd, Elementary Teacher at Frazee, Krista Reese, Math Teacher at the Spartan Learning Center, Jeremy Shoemaker, Elementary Teacher at Eastview. The next one is Eva Siculon, and I wish I could remember because she got married over the weekend, so
Yeah.
that's not going to be the name.
It's Myers.
Is it Myers? Okay.
Oh, that's.
So Eva Myers, is it, but as we did this, that's what it was. Nancy Spurlock as elementary teacher at Grandview. Moving on to classified staff, recommending Carly Briscoe, educational assistant at the middle school, Linda Brock, health assistant at the middle school, Jessica Catron as education assistant at Grandview, Juliet Collins, special ed assistant at Eastview, Haley Flannery, education assistant at Fayette Central, Lisa Hamilton, Title I education assistant at Fayette Central, Kylie Heil, bus aide. Nicole Cap, a permanent substitute at Eastview. Teresa Lucas, bus driver. Gina Milano, permanent substitute at the high school. Eva Palmer, permanent substitute at Frazee. Christy Red, special ed assistant at the high school. Brandon Reeve, bus aide. Tiffany Richardson, life skills assistant at Eastview. Sarah Shaver, SLC coordinator at Spartan Learning Center. Randy Sherwood, bus aide. Mark Still, welding education assistant at the Career Center. McKenna Wolf, education assistant, Fayette Central. And then extracurricular, recommending Kevin Cassidy as assistant football coach. Brenna Ellis, JV volleyball coach. And Lisa Hogger, JV cheer coach.
All right. I would like to seek a motion to approve the personnel report.
I so moved.
Thank you, Ann. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Permission to advertise for the 2025 budget plans and hearings, Mr. Harris.
It's that time of year again to start the budget process, but I'm requesting permission from the board to advertise the hearing information related to capital projects plan and bus replacement plan. As a reminder, the law no longer requires us to publish this in the local newspaper, but it will be placed on our public links on the Fayette County School Corporation's website. We will have at the September board meeting, the regular meeting, will be a public hearing to conduct on the 2025 Education Fund and Operations Fund budget and the Capital Projects Fund and the bus replacement plan. Then at our October 8th meeting will be recommendations for the board to approve those budgets.
Randy, at the hearing, next meeting, that's where you explain it all.
There'll be a nice lengthy,
Right.
boring presentation.
Yeah, but
Hopefully
that's
we can
good.
excite,
That's good for
that'll
us.
be the whole presentation
Yeah,
in the hearing.
okay, great, thank you. All right, I'd like to seek a motion to permission to advertise for the 2025 budget plans and hearings.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Affirmation of the 2025 Support Staff Employee of the Year, Mr. Harris.
This is one probably for the whole year, this gives me the most joy because it's my one time to present and it's my time to surprise somebody. And I think every year the person is usually surprised. But this year, I'll just read it. It's my honor to notify the Board of School Trustees that Tracy Caldwell, Guidance Secretary at Connersville High School, has been named as the Fayette County Support Staff Employee of the Year for 2025. Tracy's worked in the school district over 24 years. She's worked in multiple settings, including as primetime assistant at Fayette Central and Maplewood, Title I assistant, and media assistant at Fayette Central. The last 2 years she has been at the high school. Tracy was recognized because her presence has brought an immeasurable amount of joy to the lives of many students and families across the Fayette County School Corporation. She has a unique ability to connect and form relationships with everyone she meets. She possesses an infectious laugh, genuine kindness, and unwavering positivity, which creates a ripple effect, spreading happiness to everyone she encounters. Her empathy and compassion are unmatched. In addition to Tracy, there were many other district employees nominated for the recognition. It's my pleasure to work with so many of those outstanding staff members.
Thank you for that. She was truly surprised.
Yes, she was shocked.
All right, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the affirmation of the 2025 Support Staff Employee of the Year.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And on to the school board policy waiver of second reading and the approval of policy 3.25.1, teacher appreciation grant. Mr. Duncan.
Yeah, sure thing. So annually, we have to have this approved, and so this policy has not changed. There's nothing here that's new. The state of Indiana does give us guidelines for the dispersal of the TAG funds that we receive. Once we receive them, we have 20 days to get that out, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. I know it's hard work on our staff as far as our finance department. You can see the other things there in terms of differentiation of pay for those who are highly effective as opposed to effective at 25%. But again, we bring this annually, and we have to submit it in the month of September or prior to a deadline in the month of September, so for your approval. Again, no changes at all.
All right. I would like to take a motion to approve school board policy waiver of second reading and approval of policy 3.25.1 teacher appreciation grant.
I so move.
Thanks, Ann. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Wow, short meeting. Public comments. Persons wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. Seeing none, we move on to superintendent discussion group reports, principal director reports.
I have one from Kelly. She wanted me to read this. Her son is getting senior pictures taken this evening, but she wanted to thank CHS staff and counselors and teachers for getting students transitioned back from summer break into their school routine, and also wanted to give a shout out to parents for supporting the high school and the new cell phone expectations.
All right, director of operations report.
Can I interject something real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Principals. as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Since you guys did approve the rock this evening, and since there will not be a board meeting in the interim, but on Saturday, September the 7th, if you'd like to head on out to the middle school between 12 and 3, we will have an open house, because don't forget, this is the 100th, this is the centennial of the building that the middle school is in now, but also the class of 1969 will be there to dedicate that rock that day. So we'll get that information out. We just wanted to make you aware and invite you to come out that day. A lot of people haven't seen the building since the renovation. So feel free to check the place out.
Brian, did you say the 7th from 12 to 3?
Saturday, September the 7th.
Okay. Thank you so much.
From 12 to 3.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Any other reports? Okay. Yeah, director of operations report.
I've got a couple things. You have your fund summary in front of you. Continues to look strong, but I'm giving it to you cautiously, only from the standpoint that, as you know, we're in that time of year as we're trying to figure out what ADM is. And right now, we don't know exactly where we are. The report is not due to the state till October the 1st, so we've still got a month and a half or a little more till that all settles down. But right now, it appears we continue to lose enrollment, which means we continue to lose funding, which means that this is going to get tighter as we go along. So that's the caution I put with the fund summary. Well, if there's any questions on that, I've got one other thing here to update. The other one, just to update, we did have the bidding on the Frazee and high school pool projects. I'm going to give you the bad news, and the bad news is that they came in over budget. They came in beyond where our bond funds are for the two projects, I mean, rounding them off a little bit. If you remember, we have approximately $6 million for Frazee and the equal amount for the high school. We were about somewhere around, I believe, $800,000 above that. So right now, both Skillman and Gibraltar, they're working to see what kind of arrangements can we make, what can we do to save money on the project. Likewise, I'm looking at what can be done at our end, but there may be some additional board decisions to be made, I guess. One might be on the awarding of bids. Right now, they feel pretty comfortable that if we award bids at the September board meeting, we will still be on timeline to start Frazee in December 1 and start the pool project at the completion of the high school swim season. So they feel comfortable about that, but they would like to be able to pick up a couple of weeks if possible. But that's based on whether they can do their work and obviously whether the board's willing to have a special board meeting just to come back and vote on those projects. So that's being worked on. The other one is just kind of going along with this. It may be, do we have the money and whatever? There may be a need. We're going to be talking to Jane Herndon, if you remember her, as legal counsel with Ice Miller if we do this, as what other options might we have in the way of bonding or steps we need to take. So all of those things are being worked on by the people that we've hired to do that, but I don't have any more other than to tell you it came in over what we hoped that it would. And if you remember, likewise, even Frazee was at the very base of kind of the minimal things that we needed to do to that building. So we will keep you informed and let you know when we have more details there.
And those are base bids, and they're not alternates at all, so.
Yeah, that's what removing the alternates. The
Even
alternates
trying to do some
higher.
value engineering may be a challenge, and so we are in that process right now. And again, to Randy's point, we've seen a pretty substantial increase in our net AV, and so that allows us the opportunity maybe to go and grab some more money to help us with that project, but still in the process of figuring out the best direction forward, so.
Do they know, Randy, what, are materials going up? You know, what contributed to the higher bid?
I think that one was a little bit on the material side. The other one, this is one that's hard to get. The construction industry is so saturated in the Indy metro area that some of these bigger companies that are necessary, I mean, this is not a local home remodeler can't do the projects that we're having. So it requires getting people out of some of these other areas. And sometimes they look on it as, hey, if I'm going to the other side of Indy or if I'm going out to Connorsville, they're already saturated there. And as we talked about, I don't know how many of you have been around Indianapolis recently, but between 465 and I-69, I said, would you rather go from their office, Skillman happens to be on the south side of Indy, I said, would you rather go from your office to Carmel, drive time, or would you go from your office to Connorsville? I said, I'd rather get to Connorsville. It's a lot easier getting out here, but again, you know, they're workers and things like that, so it's where the market is today. We didn't have they had three, in some of the trade areas, they had 3 or 4 companies they were talking to, said, yeah, we're interested, they got copies of the plans, and then they backed out of it, so it's just kind of where the market is right now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that.
Thanks for
Wonderful
the-
one here, but Assistant Superintendent report.
Okay, I passed out a packet to you. I also have it displayed on the TV as well. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of our iLearn performance. I know in your packets, we gave you some information about how we performed in terms of some of our neighboring schools, but when you look at our data, what's important to us is what are we doing well and what are the things that we need to change so that we can continue to show growth. So as we go through tonight, I think the important thing is we can't just focus on the number. We have to focus on what is it telling us about what our kids know and are good at, and what are the things that our kids still need support on. So I think data can be very overwhelming at times, but it is the evidence that helps us make good decisions for our kids, and it also gives us a snapshot of what we need to continue to work on. So tonight's presentation is just a little bit about how we as administration look at data and how we break it down and kind of support some of the initiatives that you guys have been so grateful in supporting. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of that information. The first slide is just our proficiency rates. So far, the state has only released proficiency rates. They have not released any growth data. So everything that I'm talking about tonight is just about the number of kids that have shown mastery of grade level standards at their grade. So this would be students in grades 3 through 8. And if you look at the right side, I think that's where you want to focus. This is 3 years of performance on iLearn and ELA. And you can see that we have a steady increase in our performance in ELA, and that's always something that we look at as, are we consistently showing growth and increase, I shouldn't say growth because it's proficiency, but are we slowly increasing in proficiency each year, or are we dipping and making a roller coaster? The more consistent you can be in increasing proficiency means that the initiatives and the things that you have in place in your buildings are working. So we're really happy to see finally after 3 years that steady increase in performance. Now it's nothing to be overly celebrating, however, the state average is only 35.6 and we're at 35.1. So we are very close to state average, but we want to be way better than that. But I think when you just look at performance of 35% of our students showing mastery of standards, that's a very discouraging number. But then I think when you put it in terms terms of how the state is performing. I think for our students, we're keeping up. So we're doing things that we need to be doing, but we always have room for growth. The next chart is, okay, now that we have this number, what do we do with it? What is it telling us? So this is net movement, and so this is for your students in grades 4 through 8. So what we want to know is, how did kids perform last year and how are they performing this year, so that any initiative that we have in place in these particular buildings is showing success. So if you look at the green, that's 26.99. That means those students did not pass last year in 2023, but they passed this year in 2024. So we like to see that green get larger and larger each year, because that means more kids are passing and more kids are responding to Tier 1 core instruction as well as Tier 2 interventions. The light gray are students that pass both years. So they pass as in 2023 as well as 2024. So those are the kids that are at proficient levels in their grade. The red, however, is a loss for us. Those are kids that passed last year but did not pass this year. So that's where we need to really dig in and look at those kids. Who are they? What grade levels are they at? Are they attendance issues? Are they kids that had something traumatic happen in their lives? That allows us to start digging down and understanding whether or not these losses are based on our need to supplement in our curriculum in certain areas and certain grade levels, or is it something that are outside factors that are impacting student performance. And then the large dark gray, those are kids that did not pass either year. So what we do at building levels is, again, we start looking at those kiddos. Are they receiving special ed services? Are they receiving MTSS, which is your tiered interventions? And we can look at those and really see, what are those trends? Are they at particular buildings? Is it a particular grade level? And so that really lets us as administrators and teachers understand who those kids are. Because when you just get a number, that number tells you, yes, this is where we're performing, but it doesn't really help us to know what we need to do different. So this graph is one way of us looking at, okay, this is our performance. Now what do we need to do to make sure that we're doing things right? And the green is also telling too, because we can look at who are those kids. Is it a particular grade level? Did we supplement something in that area of ELA for that grade level? For example, we brought in foundations and Hegarty in our lower grades. Are we seeing more third graders passing now? And that's an outcome from that. So those are things that we need to sit down and look at further, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how we use the data. It's not like we just say, oh, we got 35%, that's really not a good number, and then we just go on. We're very intentional in using the data and understanding what our kids need in order to show growth and support. The next one, this can be somewhat of a complicated chart, but it's very good for us to see where that movement is, and this is category movement. So if you look around down the side, that's where they were last year. So above proficiency, at proficiency, approaching proficiency, and below proficiency. It used to be pass plus, did not pass, and pass. The new iLearn categories are proficiency rates. So you have this for proficiency rates. The color is the performance that they did this year. So for example, if you look at the top row, the kids who were above proficiency last year, 69 of those kids remained above proficiency. 33 of those students fell one level, but they were still at proficiency. And then 6 of them fell 2 levels.
These are percentages, not numbers.
These are kids.
These are kids.
These are
Oh,
kids.
okay.
So like out of that, what is that, 108? Yeah, 108. 69 of them remained above proficiency.
But is this just one?
This
a
is 4 through
snapshot?
8.
Oh, 4 through 8.
4 through 8, because third graders don't have a growth. They haven't taken it, so they have no previous proficiency score.
I understand that, but don't we have more than 108 kids in grades 4 through 8?
Those
Well,
are just those who.
These are just the pass, the old
Oh.
pass plus kiddos.
Okay.
Yeah,
That column
we,
on the left is their-
Yeah.
we would like for that number to be a lot higher, that's our goal.
Let's
But
see
these are, for
Okay,
you to
thank you.
take, maybe transition to new terms, these would be your pass plus kids.
Yeah.
We have always struggled to have a lot of our kids at pass plus, it's always been a goal. But if you look at proficiency, the next level, you can see that those kids or students that scored at proficiency last year, you can see their movement as well. So 61 of them increased to pass plus or above proficiency. So that's, you want to see that. I mean, that means that things that we're putting in place for them, whether it is interventions or it is core one instruction, it's working, we're moving those kids up. 113 of them remain the same, but again, you have to look at that yellow and that red. You don't want to see the yellow or the red because that means they're going backwards. But it also helps us, we can click on that little bar and it'll tell us every one of those 70 kids where they're at and what building they're at. We can look at those 20 kids and we know where they're at and where the interventions are. The flip side of this chart is the below proficiency. So you look at below proficiency, we still have 261 kiddos that were below proficiency last year and remain below proficiency this year. We have 108 that moved up, so hopefully all 108 or 6 of those receive some type of support or intervention, and that's working for them. But we had 32 that actually moved up to at proficiency. So it helps you kind of see where some of your successes are, but it also helps you see where the work still needs to be done. So the next one is math. Again, math, you can see we don't have the steady increase. However, we were at 31% in 2022. We took a little dip last year, but we recovered that dip and we're up to 32.5. The state average is 35.7. So we're not as close in performing to the state average, but it still is promising to us because we are still showing some increase, which means some of the initiatives and the curriculum that we've put in place is having impact on proficiency. And again, you look at, this is the net level movement. So this is percentages of 4th through 8th graders. We had 14.6 that did not pass last year, but did pass this year. You can see that our red is a little wider in math. So we had more of a loss in our math proficiency performance than we did ELA. And then we had 16.2 that passed last year and also passed this year. And then again, that large gray piece is where we're going to focus a lot of our work. 43.2% of students did not pass last year or this year. And then drilling down a little further, you can see the category movement. I think the highlight there again is that we had with 32 kids that moved from at proficiency up to above proficiency. But you can also see our below proficiency. We have almost 300 students there that we really we have our work to do there. So just a summary of this. ELA is showing a steady increase in student proficiency. 26% of students did not pass ELA in 2023, but passed in 2024. 61 students that were proficient on the 2023 assessment moved up to above proficiency in 2024. 32 students that scored below proficiency on the 2023 assessment moved up 2 proficiency levels to at proficient. So to move two levels on iLearn in 1 year is really a promising thing. So we want to see who those kids are, what grade that is, and really capitalize on what those teachers are doing to get that kind of movement. Math summary, pretty much the same thing. We took that dip in 2023, but we increased to exceed our 2022 score. We are not as close to the state average in math as we are ELA, but we did have 14% of our students pass the 2024 assessment that didn't pass 2023. And then we had 52 students move to at proficiency in 2024 that were approaching in 2023. So what does all that mean and what do we need to do? So I just tried to give you some ideas of what our next steps are in addressing some of these concerns. We will, as you know, pilot iLearn checkpoints for the 24-25 school year. So hopefully that will help us in knowing where our kids are struggling with what standards prior to them taking that summative assessment at the end of the year. We will continue to work with EES on IPM, which is Instructional Priorities Model. These are high yield strategies that will help kids be more successful in terms of learning the curriculum. It also helps strengthen our Tier 1. The stronger Tier 1 or core curriculum you have, the higher your student achievement is because you don't have as many kids needing those additional resources. So we really want to have a strong focus on Tier 1. We've added 2 interventionists to pilot to see if our highest socioeconomic schools could benefit from having some additional support from them. They're certified teachers. And then we implemented early release PD for elementary. Yesterday was our first day, and all of us at central office were able to get out to the buildings and see our administrators lead our teachers in some really strong PD that I think is going to have some strong impact on our scores. So we still have a lot of work to do, and I think when you see that number initially, it can be very daunting, but I think you have to take a step back and really look at, we are doing a lot of good things, and we're starting to see some of those things come to the surface and making some of our proficiency levels go up. What will be interesting is all of that movement in that movement chart, we will get growth scores and growth accountability scores later. And so anytime a kid moves from one proficiency level to the next forward, that helps us as a corporation. And when we get school grades, remember this ABCs, we were, I think, a B because we were able to show significant growth with our students. However, those kids that fall, they will not give us as much growth score. So when those things come out, I'll come back and give you a kind of an overview of how we did in terms of showing growth. Because I think with any assessment and any curriculum, we want every student to grow, but we also want to push our kids to that high bar. And it's sometimes challenging when you have a lot of kids with special needs and a lot of kids who have trauma in their life. But I think if you raise the bar, they'll get there. And so that's our goal, is to continue to look at this data, implement things in the classrooms that help support our teachers, make them as successful as they can be. So that's a nutshell of a lot of information, and I'd be happy to share anything else if you need going forward, but just wanted to give you a brief overview of our performance.
And Kim, this is not a quick fix. This is a
No.
really long, drawn-out process because of the kind of environment that we have here educationally. We're still paying dearly for the pandemic.
Yes.
So it is not going to be something we can expect huge changes in for several years.
Right.
You know, it's not going to be a quick fix.
No, we just need to see that forward movement. And as long as we're seeing that consistent forward movement, then that means that the things that we're implementing are working, and then we just have to continue to drill down and figure out the kids that are not responding to it, what can we do in addition to help them.
I have a couple of comments, questions,
Sure.
whatever. I probably bring this up every year. I get kind of a reputation, I'm sure. You know, every year when the newspaper publishes it, I count how many kids in the high school are on the honor roll. I brought this up probably every year, and I don't do that to be condemning or anything.
Right.
I think it just surprises me that typically we run 45 to 50% of our kids on the honor roll every year. And yet I'm looking at grades 4 through 8, and I'd be very curious how many of those are 8th graders. And what's happening if our proficiency numbers, I'd be curious to know if in our 8th grade, 50% of our students are performing at or above proficiency, because those would be the kids I would think that would be able to possibly achieve. I don't really know, at or above proficiency doesn't necessarily correlate to a grade in a class, but it does send the message that they're able to obtain the information in a way that works for them and produce
should be able to.
results. Yeah, so that's always a concern for me, because the other thing is, I don't know, I mean, I was looking at this, and when you were describing how much more information you can extract, and I'm sure you will be, and Jeremy too, how much time that takes. But I know that some districts, and I don't know if we've ever had the time in recent years to do this, look at our kids that go to college and how many aren't successful because whatever, either, I mean, it could just purely be they didn't like college, but it could also be because they weren't prepared enough. And what always, you know, I used to always ask, okay, what's our AP score rate? What's our SAT score rate? And yet we've got 45 to 50% of our kids on the honor roll, but our SAT is well below the state average. How does that make sense to me?
And I think that's, I know that we've had this conversation
Every
multiple
year,
times.
probably.
And that's okay, it's
Yeah,
a fair
I just-
question.
it's
And I think,
curious
you know,
to me.
what, we as building leaders always have those discussions with our teachers as well. And I think sometimes when you look at a report card grade, there's more in there in just mastery of a standard. There is compliance of completing work. There is that group work. So there are more factors that factor into a report card grade versus a summative assessments where it's a one-time snapshot of their performance of a particular standard. So while I don't disagree that there should be some correlation to a student that has A's and B's in their performance on a summative assessment, I think you also have to help teachers understand, as well as parents understand, that a report card grade is more than just a one snapshot assessment of a standard. There are many factors that work into that to create that whole grade. Now, should they be A's and B students and be passing this? Absolutely, and those are discussions that we as administration and building leaders have to have with our teachers, and that's why this data is important to us. And we're very fortunate that we have a computer system that does all of this for us, because this would be very time consuming. But we can click on those kids and we can look at their grades, and if they aren't passing or they are, we could look at your honor roll and we could see where they are performing and make those correlations, and then start looking at, you know, what is it that we can do better to make sure that we're communicating their mastery in the classroom with the alignment of their mastery on state assessments.
That's very helpful. And you know, for any of us, when our kids were in school and they get their test results back, their standardized test results back, and you know, we know kids feel the high stakes too,
Sure.
and the
There's anxiety.
disappointment. And you'll hear kids say, but I get good grades in school, you know, so that's a little bit confusing for them. So I appreciate you taking the time to answer that. Ann brought this up. I suppose when you dig into these figures, in those fourth graders are COVID kindergartners.
Absolutely.
So what percent of those numbers are our kindergarten,
Right.
first, second graders, particularly with ELA, but math too, but you know, early readers and being able
Yeah.
to manage that. So I don't know if you'll be able to provide us with that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, that might be helpful. Just, I mean, you know, the pandemic is the gift that keeps on giving. And lastly, do we know anything about iRead for our kids over the summer?
Yes, our iRead scores actually did tick up. We did do pretty well. I will make sure I don't want to talk those percentages
Yeah.
without, I didn't want to put it in here just because I felt like it might muddy the water with iLearn, because they're two very different types of assessment. But I would be happy to share with you a brief chart of those next meeting.
Yeah.
But we did go up to, we increased by a couple percentages.
That's great.
We have schools that are back in the 90% passing rate. Our goal is 90% as a district. We're in the mid 80s, like the 85%, but don't quote me on that.
That's great though.
but we did show an increase in I-read scores as well. So we're happy with our movement forward. You know, it's hard when you have movement that you go up and then you fall down and you go up again, because it's hard to figure out, okay, what are we doing right? Why is it moving all over the place? I always say it's kind of like weight loss, you know. When you get that consistent weight loss, you think, okay, I'm doing something right, it's working, you get motivated. Test scores and data can be the same way. When you start to see it kind of plateau and start moving up at a consistent rate, it motivates you to say, hey, we're doing things right, kids are responding, and then you keep moving. Because it's hard sometimes to keep moving forward when you don't see those results increase.
If I can, really quick.
Absolutely.
Kim, you're awesome. That was really good. So one thing I will say too, on the flip side, I know you talked a little bit about one side of it, but the truth is the test has changed dramatically from what it used to be, right? So I think it's important to note that for a long time, we were used to being in the 90th percentile on ISTAT. Like that was the norm, right? And so at that time, there probably was a pretty strong parallel comparison between what you saw in the classroom and what you saw on those standardized tests. The reality of it over the course of time is that I don't know that our systems and our curricula and all those things have necessarily adjusted themselves at the pace that iLearn expects. And so I liken it to a baseball coach, you know, and you're going out and you've got your pitching machine on 75 miles an hour every day, and then you step up to bat on a Friday night and the pitcher's throwing 95, right? So we have to get to a place where we develop systems that help our kids with both the rigor, and I'm just going to say it, the stamina to take the test. Because if you look at iLearn, if you get into it and get in the weeds a little bit, I don't know if you ever have, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to do it. Like you can get on the state's website and pull up the third grade iLearn released items repository. It'll blow your mind. Because it's the cognitive demand on our students when they take that assessment. It's not an excuse, I'm just being honest. The cognitive demand is here. It's multi-step problems, it is rigorous, and like I said, it develops a certain type of stamina that, again, I don't know that in education in general in Fayette County that our systems have caught up to that yet, to be able to appropriately prepare kids for success on that particular exam. And I say that particular again because we all know it's one data point, right? And so our teachers do an incredible job with what they do, and there's so many different data points we can pull that would show success in the classroom in lots of ways. And so, you know, we've explored a math curriculum that we're doing some pilot stuff with right now that does, I feel like, better replicate both that rigor and that need for, pushing through the difficulties of a task that's pretty long and lengthy. And so, again, none of those things are excuses, it's just context. And so our principals are working really hard to try to find ways to replicate those types of experiences for our kids so they don't step up to bat with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball not ready for it. So.
Well, and also there's some kids that are just not good test takers. I'm sitting here as one. And they just do not take standardized tests still. There's a lot of anxiety. Look at the third grade iLearn. It will scare you because they're asking 8-year-olds to do things that their brains perhaps are not developmentally ready to do. They are asked them to do abstract learning and compilations that are just, and it's good to have a 7th grader do some of these things. The developmental, with all the studies that we do now on kids' brains and how they work, and it's fascinating stuff. The assessments, the standardized assessments that we give our children here in Indiana are not aligned with what we know now, how their brains develop, how they learn how to think. 3rd graders cannot abstract. They are very concrete. And the way the tests are set up, it asks them for abstract learning. It asks them, a 3rd grader, to basically do algebra. Some of them can, some of them can't. So the snapshot in time, and when you have 3rd graders throwing up because they can't pass iLearn and they're afraid that they're not going to go to 4th grade, that is fundamentally educationally absurd. It is not in the best interest of kids, and our legislators don't seem to understand this, so we're kind of, as educators, we're caught in the middle of this. But if you tell a child at 3rd grade, at 8 or 9 years old, that you are a failure, the likelihood of them succeeding beyond that is exponentially lower, because everyone says if they're not reading it by third grade level, then their chances of graduating from high school go down, and that's old data. So I think we have a lot of challenging kids, and this data is very, very helpful. The fact that we could individualize things. But the bottom line is some kids are just, they're not going to be, you tell them they have a timed test and they're going to.
Oh, yeah, I hear that, and I appreciate that perspective. And Jeremy, your comment about, this is a relatively new test from the way we used to test. And if there's enough back and forth, who knows? Legislature could come up with another test in another 5 years and say, oh, I learned wasn't the one. Why are you already hearing these rumors?
No,
It's just not what we're after.
I just want the target to stay still.
Exactly.
Well, I know, but isn't that how it always works?
Yeah, no, that's why we're chuckling, because
Yeah,
that's
and-
just
and-
when you think you figured it out.
Then they change it.
Exactly.
Well, and we've all talked for years about the I don't want to say absurdity, but because I think there's a benefit, there's some benefit, obviously there's benefit to data, but teaching to the test as opposed to teaching. And, I commend you guys in administration, including our principals, who are looking at all this data and trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have to live with, because that is
It is
where
what
we
it
are.
is.
That we have to live with that. And, I do know that feeling for kids, because I had one that, the test scores didn't reflect what we thought she could be doing, but, and that was a letdown, and then they don't want to, take the test again, and it leads to all kinds of other things. But
And Leslie, I bet she made the honor roll too.
she did.
Huh?
She did.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think sometimes we forget that most of these performance tests are dealing with math and English,
Yeah.
and kids may do quite well in all of their other subjects.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're on the honor roll. So,
Yeah, it's discrepant information. That's
Yeah.
where I fall. It's just like, I don't want false hopes, and I also don't want kids to think, oh, well, like Anna's saying, well, I did so poorly, why even try? So, and I know our teachers are living that every day. Our administrators are trying to look at the information and figure out the best route to go. So this is a lot.
Well, and it's so.
It's a lot for you guys to.
it's a
It's
fight you
all-
can't quit on. You just got to keep at it all the time.
It's old problems. I mean, when we had ISTEP back in the day and we went to that. But it wasn't so, I don't want to call it critical, maybe that's not the right word, but I think that there's a lot more emphasis put on it now, and just from the public at large, that these things are so important. And the point that Leslie made about how are kids doing when they go to college, I would be very interested in seeing those, because I track a lot of the kids that I've known. Some of them do very well, a lot of them don't. And what factor, is it academic factors involved? Is it they are now out on their own, they're not living with mom and dad anymore? How do they handle all those other adulting things that you think at 18 are really going to be cool, then you have to do them. And they become, you have children that have gone to college, you understand exactly what I'm saying. It's not so cool. So is it our job to help prepare those kids for some of those life skills that are going to help them succeed beyond the walls of high school?
Well, and then we get into, which isn't part of this discussion, the graduation pathways changing, which the fear, that kids then will enter college and not be prepared, those that choose to go to college. So, and I don't know where that discussion is on the state level, but at some point I want to hear about that. Thank you, Kim.
Thank
That's
you.
so much information, and I hope you love learning about all that, because it's a lot you did. Yeah, great. All right, superintendent's report.
Sure.
Mr. Duncan.
Real quick, I will add this. I do think we're headed in the right direction with some things, and we have stepped away from school-wide letter grades because we realize that socioeconomic class, and factors are probably play a bigger role in that than the education within the building, right? And so that's a good thing. I think that the move to formative assessments, a model that we're continually tracking kids in progress, is a good thing. So there are some really good things happening on that front, and we stepped away from holding our teachers accountable for the progress of their kids, and I think in a lot of ways that's really good too. So we can get rid of that pressure cooker environment for our people. So I just want to say that. A couple things really quickly. I just want to say thank you to everybody for a great start to the school year. Daryl obviously is here. He and his team, Jimmy and Lou and Yvonne, have worked really, really hard and to get our kids to and from school safely. And do want to publicly say thank you because they do a tremendous job of that. That is a monumental task. And so we're going to be better next year at starting maybe a little bit earlier. We were better this year, I believe, than we were in the past, it sounds like, to try to help make sure that those guys aren't too much under the gun, if you will, to do their work. But they have done a tremendous, tremendous job. Terry and his tech team have done the same, and so thankful for them. Our principals, directors, teachers, all the way down, support staff have been awesome. Had a great first couple days, had an awesome time, and thank you to those who attended breakfast, and Mark and Ann and Leslie were there. Had a good opportunity to be together in fellowship and to cast some vision, which was a lot of fun. And so it was nice to have all our people in one place at one time. I don't know that we've done that a lot with even our non-search, our classified staff. So that was really, really good. Just wanted to give you an update on a couple things, and I will pass the buck here a little bit to Daryl to talk as well. But I know we've had some questions about the baseball diamond and where we are with that. We did see some movement out there today, which was really, really good. Long story short, we've been at the mercy of others in terms of, and tell me if I'm wrong, electrical connection wasn't quite enough, and so we had to go back and we had to upgrade that electrical. And at that point in time, we were waiting on Duke Energy, and that's where we sit currently, is waiting on our friends at Duke to come and finish their part of the job to give us electrical power. With that said, though, my understanding is we had some folks out there today
We had some
working.
electric guys out there today. We put in 110 for the sprinkler system, which is what they called for, and it wasn't what they need. We don't have enough water pressure coming up the hill to get that where we need to be. So there was a lack of communication between the sprinkler and us and them, and so there's a lot of responsibility can be taken from this, but we ended up having to go back and put in 240. So now we're back to where we need to be. The sprinkler guy was here talking to our electrician today, so they're going to start rolling along, but we're waiting on Duke. The one thing I learned from this project, though, is we have a company that took the lead, and I should have stayed more involved with phone calls each week to see where we were at. And they were all their contractors then. So I've learned a little bit that this is my problem, and I should have had more phone knowledge with each of our people. So we are starting to move again, but I'm not hearing good things, so we'll just see what happens.
And Daryl, to protect you a little bit, understand that we do hire people to do the work, and so it's not completely your responsibility. So, there's been some pressure put on some companies to help make sure we get rolling, and that's where we are.
I had reached out to Jeremy because, I'd seen in the Friday letter about the baseball fields, and I just had a guy who really wasn't complaining, he was just observing, and he walks a lot out by the high school,
Absolutely.
and he just said, what is happening? And his comment was, the right field is slopes, and he said it looks dangerous. I don't know if it's dangerous. I've not been out there to see it. And he said, all that straw that was brought in has just sat. I have a lot of straw, if somebody wants some straw. I wasn't too worried about the straw, it's not a huge expense, but he just wondered, where are things? And I realized maybe, I hadn't asked, and I didn't know where things were, so I
It's
reached
been a
out to
real
Mark, because
eyesore.
he usually knows.
It's been an eyesore. Mark and I have had communications back
Yeah.
and forth about it because he's concerned. And, we should have had it done. Those seniors should have got to play on that one game. And, that reflects on me and all of us, and we learn to stay on top of things more. And even though there's a contractor taking care of it, we need to stay more involved.
Well, I appreciate the response, that's great that you're all following up, thank you.
Yeah, so Randy spoke a little bit to ADM. We are currently down about 100 kids from where we were last year at ADM time. Last year, between the start of school and when we actually report on October 1st, we gained 150 kids. Now, that's pie in the sky, we hope that happens. But at the same time, our average, and I think I sent this to you, our average reduction in students per year annually for the last 9 years, almost a decade, has been about 50 kids, right? And so we're going to work on what we do as a corporation to regain and retain, right? Because the reality is, being in the county center, like, it's hard to really grab kids out of county. Like, we know that's difficult, that's a long drive for folks. But how do we regain those kids that we've lost, and how do we retain those kids that we have? And that's our obligation, right? That's why you hire us, is to develop systems that allow kids to be successful, to develop a culture that people want to be a part of. And that's why, again, that's why you hire us. So we're going to be working on that and putting some things in place and really selling the good news that's happening. We have awesome people here and doing great things for kids every day. And so, yeah, we're going to work on that. But we'll keep you up to date with what that number looks like. October 1st is the date for our fall ADM. I think spring is February the 3rd. Does that sound right, Randy? Where we have our second count day. So we're essentially working off a projection that Randy would have submitted some point in time last year in terms of funding. But when the money follows a student, it's important, right? So every one of those students, I think, our basic tuition support this year is somewhere around $76.85 a kiddo. And so it is important for us in terms of funding as we try to make sure we take care of our people and provide good opportunities for kids. I talked a little bit in our Friday message about board policy updates, but we're still in the process of talking to a few different vendors about what that might look like to make sure that we have our policies up to date and in line with current legislation. And then moving forward, anytime legislative action is taken in Indianapolis, then we would have, of course, somebody there to help us with those changes. I know it was mentioned a minute ago as far as the attendance policy. Just want to put that out there, how important that is this year. And I say that to you as a board, but I also say that to our community publicly. If kids aren't in school, we can't teach them. And so I think one of the consequences or the fallouts of COVID has been this idea that school is optional, and the reality of it is it's not optional. Like, you got to be there. And so the Indiana compulsory attendance law tells us that. This last year, legislative session, they went even further to say you had to have a habitual truancy policy, you have to have some certain steps in place. And so we tried really hard. Our principals done a great job of communicating those things to our families, but essentially more than 10 unexcused absences, that means without a phone call, without a good excuse for not being in school, our students are considered habitually truant at that point, and there are steps that we have to take as a school corporation. We don't want any of our constituents or families to be there. The last thing we want to ever do is for our people to be in trouble because their children don't come to school. But we have that obligation legally, but also obligation as far as making sure that our kids are at school. That's the best place for them to be, right, is to be at school learning. And so really, really important. Other things, just give kudos to Daryl again for his project. He did some LED lighting projects, both at the library at the high school and in the maintenance area, that look really good. Getting some pricing right now on taking some further steps with LED lighting. The reality is LED lighting will pay for itself in literally 2 years, and then every year after that we're saving money. Hand over fist. Like, it's a pretty easy way for us to look at operations and look at a way that we can you kind of tighten the belt moving forward, but it does have an upfront cost, right? And so we've got some work that Randy has been doing with some companies to give us an idea, and Daryl, on some pricing for further LED lighting. So that's exciting. But I think that's all I have. So
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Daryl, the bathrooms at the bowl,
We are starting, they're actually in there grinding the floor. We got all the plumbing out so we could see where water was standing. So I met with Donnie today of Wholesale Carpets, and they're grinding and moving forward on that project. And we should have stuff start to be delivered next week, I think he said, on that project.
thanks.
Yep.
For the good of the cause. I also wanted to thank the transportation department. I know there were some struggles, as there always are at the beginning of the year, and I also know how hard that department works to keep up. And so I really appreciate all the work, and I hope our parents maintain their patience, because that's a challenge, and it's, parents not knowing, even if they're responsible for not having either registered on time or communicated effectively. I mean, it's the start of school year. Not everybody has access to everything all the time, so that's challenging. I did want to shout out to Rachel O'Brien for that breakfast because there were a lot of people there and the line actually moved quickly. That was amazing, how many people fit in there. So
And it was good.
it was.
It was very good.
Yeah, it worked out. I thought it worked out really well. It was nice for everybody to get to visit, so that's all I've got. Anybody else?
We've had a fabulous start to the school year. It's always like putting together a huge jigsaw puzzle at the beginning of the school year, and parents get frustrated and kids get frustrated, and there are those parents that are technologically challenged, which make it even more difficult. Theoretically, they should have been able to do all this stuff online, but a lot of phones can't do it, and I work middle school registration, and there were a lot of really good people that were just deer in the headlights, particularly I think because it's middle school, and that's pretty typical. But we got everybody in, and I think the kids are adapting well. I thought it was really cool that Jeremy was at the high school on the first day of school, greeting all the students coming into Connersville High School. I thought that, and you look pretty good in that Grandview t-shirt too.
Yeah, you did. You really
Yeah,
rocked
that was
Yeah.
really cool.
And most of them made eye contact and spoke, which is
Well,
really
that's
good.
impressive.
Yeah, I told Kelly, I said, that's awesome. That's really, really well
Well,
done. So,
Yeah.
I think that you're brand new, and I think just the fact that you recognized that you needed to have that personal touch with the kids, because you can't teach them if you can't reach them, and you can't reach them if you're not there. And the high school kids thought it was pretty cool. He says, "Is that the new superintendent?" "Yeah, it is." "Well, he was there the first day of school." Okay. You made a positive impression.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Still get busier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, he's here again before you know it. But it was nice for the first day.
Yes, it was.
Anything else from everybody? Anybody? All right, you know who we're looking at today.
Uh-oh.
I'll make that motion to
And-
adjourn.
And do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand, opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.